Who to bench and who to captain? We've got the answers in your Game Week 27 preview, and welcome to my new YouTube show. We're going to be speaking to the world number one in a couple of minutes, but first, let's look at those two big questions. Firstly, captaincy. Do we look at Brentford or do we look at Brighton? Look, there's an argument to say there's some single game week players with some really nice fixtures, but I think we're all going to be pointing in a similar direction when it comes to Tony and your Brighton midfielders. So let's weigh up the pros and cons of both. Well, first, what we do with captaincy every week, we look at form, we look at fixture. And if we're looking at fixtures, well, Brentford have two away ties. Now, for me, that's crucial. We know their away form hasn't been great. However, as we saw on last week's show, Tony's output away from home is very similar to Tony's output at home. So that shouldn't put us off too much. So Brentford, of course, go to Everton and Southampton. Now, Everton haven't been keeping the clean sheets we expected under Sean Dyche. And Southampton, whilst they've kept a clean sheet against Leicester, they conceded a ton of XG. So, on paper, those fixtures are pretty good for Brentford. Now, Brighton, what about their fixtures? Well, it's one home, one away. They go to Ellen Road, so it's away to Leeds. And then, of course, they have the home fixture in the derby for them. It's the Crystal Palace game. So do we prefer the Brighton fixtures? Well, maybe slightly, because I like that home advantage. But more than that, I prefer the fact that Brighton have been smashing it of late. When we look at the underlying data, and if we just take, say, the last 4 game weeks, for example, and we look at the minutes per chance, well, Brighton rank first out of 20 teams in the Premier League. Yeah, that's right. So they're top of the charts. They have produced a chance every 4.9 minutes in the last 4 game weeks. So the Brighton attack is absolutely firing, and some of us were on the right or wrong end of that last week, depending on what midfielder we selected. I went for Solly March. Of course, it was Matoma and McAllister that produced. But this week, I really think I want to be backing that Brighton midfield again with the armband. And when we look at the individuals, we can look at the goals and the assists here, but also some of the XGI and the attempts in the box of, I think, the 4 outstanding candidates this week. So we're going to compare Tony with the Brighton mids. We can look at the underlying stats of a March. We can look at the overperformance of Matoma. We can look at the clinical finishing and the penalty area touches of your likes of Tony. So how do we split this? Well, it's really difficult to say, and I think captaincy will come down to personal choice. As I mentioned, I'm looking towards the Brighton players because of fixture. But am I set on what Brighton midfielder I'm going to go for? I own March and Matoma. No, at the moment I'm veering towards Matoma. Now, his XGI is worse. This is all since the restart than March's. March's underlying stats are brilliant, as are McAllister's. But what we know from Matoma is he's an overachiever. He scores worldies. He scores from low XG chances. He's a better finisher than the other two. He's also flying off the back of last week. So I think Matoma is perhaps at the moment most likely to get the armband for me, but at the same time I am tempted to double down on March, knowing he let me down last week when he was still very, very good and he creates so much. He has the set piece threat as well, which Matoma doesn't carry. So it's a really interesting one to ponder there. I think it will be a late call for me on the Friday or Saturday morning, but I am pretty set at the moment, I think, on going towards Brighton over Brentford, of course. But now I wanted to get to that other question, and that's around benching. Because look, for those that wildcarded like me, we knew when we were wildcarding, we were setting ourselves up for a bit of heartache. We saw it last week if you benched Matoma or McAllister, but we're going to see it this week. We are producing on a wildcard a 15-man squad to set us up for a bench boost later down the line, maybe in a fortnight's time. And with that in mind, you know you're going to suffer from bench points. This week, perhaps more than ever, because at the moment, players I'm looking to start and players I'm looking to bench, well, it's going to be a tricky one. Look, I think you have to start your double game week players, of course you do, but you also have to start Rashford, you have to start Haaland, you have to start Kane if you own him, and you probably have to start Trippier if you own him. So there are 4 players there. Saka as well, right? We have to. That's 5 players plus your double game week as well. That leaves us with perhaps an Arsenal attacker on the bench, or an Arsenal defender on the bench, or a Newcastle defender that's not Trippier on the bench, or Kepa on the bench. So if we look at the bench that I'm looking at this week, Kepa, Martinelli, Zinchenko and Botman. Now, is this bench boost worthy? Absolutely it is. And if you think this is a good week to bench boost for your team, then go for it. Ordinarily, I would look at this and go, it's a bench boost week. But when I wildcarded, the plan was always a bench boost 29. And when I look ahead to what I'll have in 29, I think it's a better bench boost than what we have here. Now, we could have injuries and suspensions in 29, and I have flags. And if with that, I don't get the bench I want. But at the moment, the bench I want in 29 includes 2 double game weekers and 2 players with a good single game week fixture. For example, Saka could have Leeds at home. So I think for me, it's still sticking to your guns and a 29 bench boost. But if you're tempted on 27 and you've got a bench similar to mine, I think I'm going to have a good scoring bench this week. And it's going to be very, very difficult to watch Martinelli and Zinchenko bang big against Fulham, who looked pretty bad last time out, I think, against Brentford. Pretty bad without Paulinho, and he's still suspended for this game. For Arsenal, we had a 2-match suspension. So, benching Heartache, more than likely. Drop a comment, let me know you've got on your bench, and I'll give you my 2 pence worth if I think it's worth a bench boost or not. Let's see how I got on last week, shall we? So, last week was very disappointing for wildcarders. Now, if you have wildcarded, you can take a little bit of comfort, and actually take a lot of comfort, that a lot of your competitors, a lot of the people you're competing with, both in your mini league, but on FPL Twitter, or maybe you're competing with content creators, a huge amount of them wildcarded too. So a huge amount of them made the same mistakes you did, right? We're in a similar boat here. And when we fail in FPL, it's a bit rubbish. But when we fail together in FPL, it ain't so bad. It really isn't, right? And we failed together last week. So look, yes, we sold fair play if you kept Salah, by the way. Well played. And Trent and Robbo and Darwin. But we failed together. So I've done that thing that you shouldn't really do when you're wildcard, and summed up how many points I might get if I wasn't to wildcard. And if I'd gone my normal transfer of Nketiah to Tony, which was planned, and I would have got 74 points. Instead, I got 39 points. I would have captained Saka in both these scenarios, by the way. So, yeah, 33 points down, but it is what it is. We move, let's look forward. This has to be a game, FPL, and games have to be fun. So if you're too down about a bad decision, then maybe think about how you're playing the game and how you're treating the game. But for me, it's always about looking forward and about being positive. So yes, it was a bad week, but I've got loads of good weeks, I hope, to come. And I hope this is going to be a good one coming up. So let's have a look at my team. So captaincy is up in the air. At the moment, I've got the armband on Matoma. I could go to March. I don't think I'll go Tony. As I mentioned, my bench is very good. And I'm okay with that. You take the rough with the smooth. No planned transfer for me this week. I plan on having 2 for next week where I can really target that blank. And I think next week it's very likely I'll be selling Erling Haaland. In fact, almost certainly. Game week 28, he has no fixture. Game week 29, he has a Liverpool fixture. So 1 game across 2 game weeks, when other forwards will have 3 games across the 2 game weeks. I'll be bringing him back for game week 30, but a short-term punt on a João Felix or a Havertz or a Watkins next week will be a load of fun. And I'll perhaps be using both my transfers to try and get 10 men out for the blank and still set myself up for a very nice bench boost in 29. But for now, it's rolling. If you own Sanchez, I think you probably have to sell him. The Brighton keeper didn't start and still came in and got a clean sheet. A sideways move there to Steele, I don't hate at all, because I think Steele has probably still got that number 1 spot because he played well and they kept a clean sheet. De Zerbi has said they're going to be competing. So that's my team. Very soon, we're going to be talking to the world number 1, giving his tips to you guys. But first, we've got 60 seconds worth of talking tactics on Chelsea. Have Chelsea turned a corner? I think yes. The win over Leeds, the win over Dortmund. What have we seen that's different? Well, firstly, Graham Potter, thank you, because this squad is built for 3-4-3 and you're now playing 3-4-3. And boy, does this change the way Chelsea play. What's really interesting about this pass map, look at Chilwell. We saw Loftus-Cheek last time out against Leeds or Reece James in that slot. But Chilwell especially, super high, super involved. He got the assist against Dortmund when they won the penalty. He got the assist again versus Leeds. There's always goal threat with Chilwell. Now this looks like a proper team, well set up. They play in the blank. They have a good enough double. I think a punt on Chilwell is definitely the outstanding Chelsea candidate at the moment. But also Reece James. It's all in the fullbacks. And if we're selling Haaland short term, I think Havertz, who we now know is on penalties, is also worth consideration. But Felix too. They're both going to get a lot of game time. And for me, this Chelsea team has turned a corner. There we go. 60 seconds on why Chelsea looks so much better. It's all down to shape. So now, guys, let's talk to our world number one, who's got some tips ahead of Game Week 27. So now we are joined by FPL royalty. This is world number one in the house, Ali Jahangirov. He finished 215th last season, and he's currently world number one. So who better to ask about this game week? Ali, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing great, thank you. Thank you for having me, Gianni.
No, thank you for joining us. I mean, look, it's a really interesting one this week because for those that wildcarded, that's stacked with Brighton and Brentford assets, and a lot will look there for captaincy. But look, you've still got your wildcard, so perhaps you haven't got a full quota of Brighton and Brentford assets. So I guess my question to you was, what do you think? Who are you thinking about captaining this week? Because you've got other options outside those teams. Do you think you'll captain a double game week player this week? And if so, who have you got your eye on?
I think so. At the moment, I only have Mitoma in my team out of all the doublers. I think I have to add a couple more, but I'm not really set on who they will be. On a captaincy, I think that some of the single game weekers, they can easily outscore doublers. Easily, starting with Salah, Bruno, even Rashford. Kane is a good shout.
Yeah.
Even Holland against Crystal Palace. That's Crystal Palace hasn't been really pulling strings lately. That's why I haven't decided yet, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it's still early in the week for that. There'll be a lot of Friday decisions on that one, and the game week deadline's not till Saturday. So you don't have Tony in your team at the moment, and I know a lot of the FPL managers in that top 10 just below you are Tony owners. Some have wildcarded. Do you think Tony will be someone you buy this week?
He's a main threat to my rank, to be honest. I'm thinking just to get a little bit defensive and get him in my team, but that would be on the expense of losing Felix or Nyonto. So which both maybe Nyonto will go, but I'll see. Let's see.
For those out there that haven't wildcarded, like yourself, do you have any idea have you earmarked when you'll wildcard? Are you thinking you'll use chips around this period of sort of the blank in 28 and the double in 29?
Planning to bench boost in game week 29. This is in between international break, I believe, right before game week 29. That's why this is exactly what puts me off wildcarding before, because my team can be easily affected by the international games, and this is not where I want to be come game week 29, because you will be thinking of bench boosting and then realize that you have only 3 or 4 players unavailable for the upcoming fixtures. That's why I would rather just navigate it with free transfers with a couple of hits and then see what the team looks like. I actually, last year, I couldn't really pull the trigger on bench boost, and I just kept it all the way, and I used it on game week 38, which gave me a significant gain, because not a lot of people use chips in game week 38. My bench scored like 16 or 15 points, but I was very few points below of the highest score of the week. So
I like that. I like that a lot. Look, game week 38 has been good for people in the past who maybe free hit that week, or, as you say, even for you, bench boosted. So fair play. One thing I've gathered from talking to you is you completely play your own game. Your chip usage is far from template. You don't have FOMO and fear of missing out, and therefore you're a patient manager that doesn't take too many chips, but you're still aggressive. And your captaincy decisions this season, for example, you've gone against Haaland a fair few times, and it's paid for you with your Salah and your Kane decisions early in the season. So you've got a good risk appetite, and I hope, mate, fingers crossed, that you finish as world number one. That would be amazing. Thank you so much for talking to me today, and thank you for supporting the Gianni Buttici YouTube channel. I know you're a keen watcher, so thank you for that, and we'll check in with you later in the season, I'm sure.
Thank you, Gianni. It was a pleasure.
So good to speak to Ali there. And look, he finished 215th last season. This guy has absolute pedigree. It's not just a one-season wonder. Interesting to see who he goes for captaincy. I think he'll go to Mitoma or Tony. So 3 differentials. First up, we've got Ben Chilwell. I spoke about him in Talking Tactics. He looks really fit. He's firing and he's super high and super wide. The assist threat and goal threat is definitely there with Chilwell. And look, he's 2.2% owned, 5.8 million. I definitely like the look of him. Next up, we've got Iheanacho at Leicester. He didn't score against Southampton. He should have done, but he's getting the chances. And that's what we want to see with Iheanacho. He also got 90 minutes, which is very rare. 1.05 XG against Southampton. Leicester produced bundles of chances. Maddison's back fit. He'll put it on a plate for him. I think Iheanacho is going to have some success in the next few game weeks for sure. And next up, we've got Brennan Johnson. He's got a couple of good home fixtures coming up. He's just scored 2 goals, but Nottingham Forest look like they're a team that have got a little bit more swagger, a little bit more confidence. The way Brennan links up with Gibbs White, I think is really impressive. And behind him, he's got that creative source in Gibbs White. I think Brennan Johnson's second half of the season is going to be really strong as Forest's home form carries them through. And when they're at home, they score goals. And he's a guy I'd like to back at a budget price point. So thank you guys for watching this week. It's been a jam-packed show as always. Please, before you leave, not only hit the like button because it helps the YouTube algorithm. I don't understand all that stuff, but apparently it does. But also subscribe to the channel. If you hit that bell, you'll be alerted every time we go live. But these Thursday shows have been awesome so far. I love your comments. Thank you for supporting the channel.